Dun, 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 dun. That, for those of you who didn't know, probably most of you do know, that was written by Danny Elfman, the theme song to Tales from the Crypt. One of his many really great creepy tunes. Obviously, we all know Nightmare Before Christmas and all the other great things that he wrote music to, Pee-wee's Big Top, all that stuff. And over the years, this just sparked a little thing in my head. I don't normally talk about this, but they had so many great people that did music for Tales from the Crypt over the years, including, Hans Zimmer, who, a lot of you may or may not know his work. He's scored many, many, many movies and TV shows over the years. Come on in, creeps. You're late. No, you're cool, man. You're cool. Have a seat. You're going to have to check your weapons at the door, man. I'm sorry.
This is inflatable.
Okay. Enjoy. I was just talking about how they had such great musicians over the years that worked on Tales from the Crypt. Ry Cooder, does anybody know Ry Cooder's work? Coming from down here, his music always had that slide guitar kind of sound. Walter Hill, who directed 48 Hours and Dreamscape, and he was one of the executive producers on Tales from the Crypt. He directed the episode A Man Who Was Death with William Sadler, where he played the executioner in the prison. That was the first episode, actually. And there was a number of other episodes that he directed. He directed the Chop Poker episode, where they're, pass me the gum. And he always uses Ry Cooder to do the music in a lot of his shows. Anyway, Tales from the Crypt, as we know, as a lot of you know, was based on a comic book from the 50s and 60s that EC Comics, which was a company that a guy named William Gaines owned, started back then. And it was very controversial because of the content and the attraction from young kids loving that comic book. And of course, there were a lot of parents with their up in arms over it because they thought it was turn their kids into juvenile delinquents. Look at this. It's the proof right here. Tales from the Crypt. One of my favorite little things the Crypt Keeper did. He's got a brain in a pan and he's frying. He goes, "This is your brain." And he goes, "This is your, used to be, this is your brain on drugs," was the commercial they used to have. He was like, "This is your brain," and he smashes it with a hammer. "This is your brain at Tales from the Crypt." He smashes it. But thanks for coming by, guys. But they turned it in, the comic books stayed around for a long time until EC Comics came up with Mad Magazine. Any Mad Magazine fans here? Did you guys have Mad Magazine? And so I think they, with the negative press of the Tales from the Crypt comic books and Tales from the Vault, Two-Fisted Tales, all these different EC Comics, the stories kind of went to the wayside. And then years later, some of the biggest producers in Hollywood, Joel Silver, who did all the Matrix movies and Lethal Weapon movies and Die Hard movies, and a big producer, and Richard Donner, who directed the Lethal Weapon movies and Die Hard movies and the Superman movie, the first of the series of modern day Superman movies, was an executive producer on Tales from the Crypt and also directed a number of episodes. Bob Zemeckis, who we all know did the Back to the Future movies and Forrest Gump and all these other great movies, was one of the, Roger Rabbit was one of the executive producers on Tales from the Crypt and directed a number of episodes. Walter Hill, who I mentioned earlier, did 48 Hours and that. And then David Giler, who did the original Alien movie, was executive producer of Alien, was one of the producers on Tales from the Crypt. So these guys got together, they bought the rights to the comic books to use for a limited amount of time, and started making this series with HBO. And they could, I mean, that's why I think the quality of the show was so amazing, because they could get favors from, they were such big producers, everybody wanted to work for them, so they could get great favors from stars, you know, coming on and working for scale on the show. I mean, as you know, watching these episodes, some of the biggest stars ever, you know, in our lifetime have been on that show. And some of the best directors, some of the best horror directors, Frankenheimer and all these other people directed episodes. And some stars even wanted to direct some episodes. So they had Michael J. Fox directed an episode, Michael Keaton directed an episode, Arnold Schwarzenegger directed an episode, Tom Hanks directed an episode, all these different stars directed some episodes too, because it was such a fun show to work on. They got some of the best creature makers. Kevin Yeager, who knows Kevin Yeager's work? Come on, you guys should know Kevin Yeager's work. Kevin is the creature maker who made Chucky, as well as made the Crypt Keeper. He also designed the look for Freddy Krueger. I believe he's probably, I think he's doing some of the stuff for American Horror Story. He does like a posing and model making and stuff like that. But he's one of the best and biggest movie, you know, horror effects guys out there. And that's who they hired to come make the Crypt Keeper. And if you look at those eyes, you may recognize they look an awful lot like Chucky's eyes. Because when they first started the show, as they do in Hollywood, very often they don't give them as much money until the show becomes a hit. So he had to make the Crypt Keeper, the original Crypt Keeper that he made for this series, with parts out of his shop. And he had some extra eyeballs from some of the Chuckies that he made over the years. And so he temporarily put some eyeballs from Chucky on the Crypt Keeper, and he liked them, so he kept them. So Crypt Keeper and Chucky have the same eyeballs. It's kind of a fun kind of fact. And don't you love my baby blues? And so they had this show. They decided they were going to make this show, which was a really big deal. And they started thinking, well, who's going to give the personality to the Crypt Keeper? Who's going to voice him and give the personality to this guy? So I was doing another series for HBO called First and 10. It was about a football team. It was HBO's first series. I played the Bulgarian field goal kicker. I could kick 60-yard field goals, which is pretty unheard of even today. But his name was Zagreb Shkenuski, and you know, loved the women, loved the money, didn't really understand the rules in the United States, but he got away with a lot of stuff. And O.J. Simpson was the general manager on the team, and Delta Burke, who a lot of you know from television and other TV shows, owned the team. She had won the team in the divorce settlement. And guys like Chris Maloney came on as quarterback for a couple of seasons. Remember Chris Maloney from SVU? And some other, Jason Begay was a quarterback on there, you know, from Monkey Shines and Californication. And so there's really great actors on that show too. HBO had a history of hiring a lot of good actors. And so they knew that I had worked as a stand-up comedian I started doing the theater in New York. I got my degree in theater at Towson University in Baltimore. And I studied theater, and then I got my first off-Broadway show, and I moved to New York. And, you know, theater doesn't pay very much, so I started doing a little bit of stand-up comedy and that kind of thing. And I got a play off-Broadway about stand-up comedians. It was me and a guy named Scott Bakula. How many people know Scott? Scott from Enterprise and from, yes, all these great shows. Quantum Leap and all these great shows. Scott was, and I played stand-up comics. And so at that time was the first year that they were doing a show called Star Search. And so they saw me in the show and they said, hey, we want you to come on the show as a stand-up comedian. I said, I'm not really a stand-up comedian. I'm just playing this part, you know, in the play. And they said, well, you can win $100,000. I went, shit, I'll do it. Hell yeah, I'll do it. So I went on the show, and I, you know, having done sketch comedy and street performing and that kind of thing, I was writing my 2.5 minutes every week. I kept winning, so I kept having to come up with more material. And I do, because I really hadn't done much stand-up, I was doing a lot of voices and characters, and, you know, like I do the Wizard of Oz in 2 minutes. You know, I do the Munchkins, and I go, as mayor of the Munchkin City in the county of the land of Oz. You know, I do stuff like that in my act. And, what's them? What's them? That's the castle of the Wicked Witch. Oh, Dorothy's in that awful place. Oh, I hate to they get her in there. Fellas, we've got to get her out. I got plan to get in there, and you're gonna lead us. All right, I'll go in there for Dorothy. Wicked Witch or no Wicked Witch. Guys or no guys, it's just one thing I want you fellas to do. What's that? Talk me out of it. Anyway, that's how I started my stand-up career. And thank you. And they, so they knew that I did all these voices, and HBO said, you know, we'd like to see you come down and audition for the Crypt Keeper. And I was like, you're kidding me, this is awesome. So I went down to Kevin Yeager's studio where he was holding the auditions, and he had like some little boombox set up with a microphone, you know, to record people's voices. He didn't really even have a sound studio there or anything. And he was working on different versions of the Crypt Keeper. And he had one that was pretty close to this already made up. And so I got to see what he looked like, and they passed out this copy, and it said stuff like, be careful what you ask for, you may get it. Stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, cool, okay. Well, I know the Crypt Keeper from the comic books, and he's kind of the storyteller. So I remembered like the old Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Twilight Zone, and so I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna be the host of the show, so he's gotta have that kind of sense of humor, tongue-in-cheek, or in the Crypt Keeper's case, tongue-through-cheek. And he must really love saying these puns. I could see the other actors that were auditioning going, oh my God, who would say this crap? These puns are awful. And I'm sitting there going, you don't get it. This guy loves saying this shit. So I went in and I did it for Kevin. You know, I'm like thinking, okay, well, I got to give him like a really good laugh. You know, like the Wicked Witch of the West. You know, I'll borrow a little from my, you know, my Wizard of Oz routine. You know, so I, you know, threw in the laugh and I did it for him, and he was like, he just sat there looking at me, and I was like, I'm sorry, is that wrong, not it? And he goes, no, man, that's so it, that's so it. The next day he had me doing it for Joel Silver and Richard Donner in their office, and the rest was history. So that's how I got the part. And the first season, it was funny because when I auditioned it, you know, I did that kind of stand-up kind of comedy thing, you know? Hello, boils and ghouls. But then when we went to record it, because they didn't, the very first Crypt Keeper, like I said, they didn't have as much of a budget, it didn't quite work as quickly. It didn't have as many motors in it. So the mouth moved really slow. So when we started recording, Kevin was like, no, we gotta slow it down because the puppet doesn't work that fast, you know? So if you look at the first couple of episodes, the first season, the Crypt Keeper talks much slower and more ominously. In fact, some people have gone, did you do the first season? He sounds different. And they don't realize the reason he sounded different was because the puppet didn't work well enough. So the show was a hit. It was an instant hit. And they gave him more money to put more motors in it. We were able to speed up the Crypt Keeper and give him that funny delivery. So that was that's kind of how it developed. Over the years, you know, we had great writers and that kind of thing. And over the years, we'd goof around in the studio, and I would do, you know, I'd do the Crypt Keeper as, you know, Marlon Brando was talking to somebody about somebody who is Stella. somebody who was named Stella that had an autograph today. She said, "Oh, there you are. Hi, Stella." And I was telling her how I started, "Stella!" From Streetcar Named Desire. And we actually did an episode of Crypt Keeper's bony arms with a ripped up t-shirt standing there, with